Buying a house in Canada these days costs a ridiculous amount of money, like an unimaginable amount of money. And some buyers are lucky enough to have a family member who's going to be like adding some coin into the bank account to pay for that deposit. But many others, probably most others, don't have that advantage. So, what are they going to do? How do they get ahead? My next guest argues that something called a blended capital approach might fill in the gaps. Jeff Klein is a well-being ecosystem consultant. I love that title, with CFH Consulting. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
What's a well-being ecosystem consultant? I want to be that. Could I be that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, yes, you can be, and you are, because you're in the ecosystem
Yes.
and you care about well-being and you provide advice and consulting to people.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Okay, I'm going to use that. I'm going to put that on the business card that I don't have. Let me
yeah,
ask you this question. What is the problem that you are trying to solve with a blended capital approach?
yeah. Thanks for asking. I think you touched on it a little bit with your intro statement. We live in a world where our economic system is built on acquiring assets and building wealth, and not everyone has an easy path to wealth building. So I see lots of different resources out there for people that, some people, as you mentioned, they might have inheritance or they might be able to borrow against something or have collateral or have a great credit score that, lenders who provide capital, they look at those things and they say, this is a low risk. So we're going to make a loan to this person, but not everyone has those things lined up. And in some cases, that's because of disparities, historical laws and policies and things that kept people from wealth building over time. Now those laws and policies and practices maybe don't exist, but there's still families catching up. And so blended capital just acknowledges that maybe not one thing is going to help someone access capital. If it's a loan, they might not have access to a loan without collateral or something to borrow against. So maybe some sort of match savings program can help someone uh, put away some money, have enough for a down payment, or some kind of collateral on their purchase. And then there's other things too. There's financial coaching that can help people. There are in the US, and there's down payment assistance programs that provide capital at the down payment and then spread out the risk over time for people. There's grants available for people. So it's that combination
Yeah.
of grants, match savings, coaching, loans, that's blended capital
Yeah.
for a household.
Now, let's start with matched savings. So, a Canadian might be familiar with this idea through the RESP, the Registered Education Savings Program. You put money in, and the government will match your contribution up to a limit. It's a small limit, but like a couple $100, but it is a limit. Are you advocating that kind of match occurs on a much larger scale when it comes to building that capital?
For sure. And these programs exist in the states. The federal government put some money towards match savings in the early 2010s and the teens. And then some states continued the practice. So state budgets in the US, some of them are allocated for match savings, and there are special programs that agencies across the state. I think Oregon runs one.
Mm.
Washington has a modified one recently, but you can save for education, for homeownership, or starting a business. So it's specific things you can save for. You might have a cap of $4,000 or $10,000. So governments can do it, and also private philanthropy can do it too. Or a credit union could set one up too.
Match savings is one piece, mainstream loans, a second piece. The third is some sort of a grant. What's been tried? What's been proven to be the most effective when it comes to a grant, i.e., something you don't have to pay back?
Well, that's a great question. These are tougher to put in place because of demand and need and things like that. So they're limited. They're programs of limited scope with granting. I was involved with the program in Washington State. I'm still sort of involved, where the state is putting $200 million towards communities that were impacted by unfair treatment in the war on drugs. So There was a whole disparities analysis across the state. Some communities were impacted more. And so the state put money towards rectifying that situation. It included match savings, financial coaching, access to loans, and also grants. So if someone wanted to start a business, purchase a piece of equipment, something like that, it's $100,000. They can't afford to pay back a $100,000 loan, but maybe they could handle a $70,000 loan. So 20,000 is match savings, 10,000 is a grant, and then a lender is now more willing to lend $70,000 than they were before, when it was $100,000 and it was a higher risk. And then you throw in a loan guarantee fund. That's another piece of blended capital.
It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Intellectually or theoretically. What are the real world examples of where places, because it sounds like it lives in community, where have they tried it and what have the results been?
So I'll give you a great example. Also in Washington State, there is a program that looked at, I don't know if people are familiar with redlining in Canada so much, but in the US, redlining was a huge problem where
Canadians are not familiar with it. Maybe give us the
okay.
2-sentence explanation. It is shocking when people first hear about it.
Yes.
Maybe it did exist here, but we certainly aren't aware of it to the same extent as they are in the US.
So these are racist real estate covenants in municipalities that said, and these have happened in Ontario and places across Canada as well, just not with the same gusto that the United States use these. But since 1910s, where if you were Black or some other minority group, at the time, Jewish people had racist covenants too, where you could not buy in certain neighborhoods. So it was illegal to buy in certain parts of certain cities. So this lasted in the US until the late 60s, early 70s. And the legacy of that means that your family was not allowed to build wealth for a long time, the way other people were able to build wealth. And in Washington State, there's a new act that was enacted in July, where if you're receiving coaching and can connect your family to a neighborhood that they were not allowed to buy in or displaced from since that time, or actually it's the areas where you were allowed to buy in, and those areas over time were over policed and under invested in, things like that, and then gentrified. And so if you could prove you were displaced from a community in a part of Washington State, you can get extra down payment assistance to buy a home.
Okay.
You can, normal down payment assistance program where you might be limited by your income at 80% area median income. If you're from one of those communities, you can go higher to 100% area median income, and you just get special supports and help to buy a home, including some grants and things like that.
Now, the dollars in your paper are in the tens of thousands of dollars. These amounts don't go very far, really, to buy a house in Canada. If we even made the effort to enact this blended capital model at the scale in which you outline, is it sufficient? Would it work?
For homeownership, you would need to address the missing middle housing gap. So starter homes that are in the $300,000 to $500,000 range at incomes in Canada are accessible. There's just no homes in that range anymore. So you'd have to do more down payment assistance or up the caps on income. So it's more middle income earners and not lower income earners who actually could afford a mortgage if they had some down payment assistance help at a higher income level. But in the US, a lot of these down payment assistance programs are capped at 80% area median income. So if the area median income in your community is $100,000 and you're earning less than 80,000, you can qualify for down payment assistance. A lot of people are priced out of that in the US. So they need to raise the cap of who can access it or provide more down payment assistance for.
One last question before we go. Your
Yeah.
career was mostly in the US. You're American by birth. You live in Canada now. What is the single most important thing that would need to happen here in Canada to have the blended capital approach be embraced, even at the pilot level?
I think you would need some government investment, and you need to boost the technical assistance infrastructure. So more business coaches, more financial coaches, more housing counselors that can help people on their financial journey. That's one thing. And yeah, just the desire and the wherewithal and the political will to focus on people who are locked out of the wealth building journey. I think that's a big piece of it. There's just a lot of people who can't access that pathway to wealth. And our society benefits when more people can build wealth, start businesses, own homes, borrow against their homes to leverage their business growth. All kinds of great things can happen with ownership.
All the things.
All the things.
All the things. Jeff, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Jeff Klein is a consultant with CFH Consulting. He was here to talk about an approach to wealth building, particularly focused on folks who have had a much harder time. It's called blended capital.